doctor is in.
Doctor is indeed in. How you doing, Ricky? Happy triple negative day.
It's triple negative day. We are in triple negative day, and it is a great day. And we have another great show, Mo.
We really do. And it's such an important topic. I think we're going to let them tell their stories and then we'll get to some facts and things about triple negative breast cancer. But what's really important today is honoring these women, these warriors, these fighters, and talking about life with triple negative breast cancer. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We have, we want to show all the faces of triple negative. And clearly we have 8 beautiful faces here. And we have Haley Dinnerman, who's the founder and the executive director of the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. And there's probably, millions of other faces, but I'm hoping that these beautiful 8 faces, these beautiful 8 wonderful women will give you a taste of what triple negative is all about. And before we get into all the facts, I'll just give you one that triple negative has the worst prognosis, and Black women get it at 2.3 times the rate. We get it younger, we get it more aggressive, and so we fight a different fight. We have a different battle, and so we are special, different, beautiful inside and out, and we all have a great story. And one of the things Haley always says that I love is there's a life attached to that tumor. So we want to bring these lives to life today and share the story. So I'm just going to randomly pick you guys, and each one of them is going to give a different perspective of our story. So you know what? I'm going to start with the baby, Ari. And Ari, you knew it, Ari. You knew I was going to start with you and let her tell her story.
Do you want me to list my 3 things?
Not yet. Tell your story first.
Okay, well, my name is Ariana. I go by Ari. I am as well a triple negative breast cancer survivor 2 times. The first time I was diagnosed, I was only 19 years old. It was 10 days before my 20th birthday. After my diagnosis, I was referred to get a double mastectomy. I got reconstruction, and I also got 16 rounds of chemo. I was in remission by September 2019, and by May 2020, I was re-diagnosed with the exact same thing, IDC breast cancer, triple negative. Luckily, it was localized. It hadn't spread anywhere, not even my lymph nodes or anything like that. And so for this second treatment, I went through 6 more rounds of chemo. I went through 2 lumpectomies, and I also did 24 fractions of radiation. And now I'm here.
You are here and thriving. And you really just finished your second round of treatment, in December, right?
It was actually the end of January. I had just finished my radiation treatment, and ironically, I'm a radiation therapy major. So I was actually getting treatment at the facility that I do my interning hours at. So I would come in the morning and I would treat my patients, and then I'd hop on the table myself and treat myself. Well, my coworkers technically would treat me. And I feel like it really did give me a different perspective, because the first time I didn't get radiation, and I thought I could relate to my patients just through diagnosis and possibly chemo, but now I could really relate to them in the full throttle, because having your skin peel and having to put those creams on every night and just the fatiguedness from radiation, I feel like I can explain the side effects and how to manage those side effects better as a therapist. So I really feel like it elevated me in my career. Wow. Definitely.
And did they treat you like a patient?
Yeah, they did. But I did get a little special treatment because I'm the princess. I'm the baby. So they were like, okay, I guess. I would turn the music up a little bit more for me, please.
Good.
But it was still very professional.
Yeah.
It was still very professional. And one of my coworkers is actually a male, and I didn't let him help treat me. So it was only one therapist treating me the whole time. And radiation therapy is a 2-person job. If you guys have never gotten it before, one person's on the side of the table and the person's on the other side, and they're trying to set you up together. No, my therapist had to run to one side of the table, run to the other side of the table, and set me up, just because I didn't feel like I could be undressed in front of a man, especially someone that I work with every single day. So yeah, I really did like that they accommodated with me.
That's great. Great. All right. So if you had to give 3 pieces of advice for a triple negative day, what would your 3 things be?
My first thing would be it would be about more like beauty tips. So I feel like when I lost my hair and my eyelashes, my eyebrows and stuff like that, I really didn't know like how to make myself feel like I looked regular. I felt like I looked sick. So if someone would have told me, yep, you just glue this lash on, glue that lash on, throw on some eyebrows, like you'll be okay. And like also like figuring out how to fix a wig, because that's not something that everybody experiences. I think my second thing would be having a dietitian or like having someone prepare my diet better, because I was on steroids and nobody really told me that I could gain as much weight as I did, because I gained like 30 pounds in 2 months. And I used to be like this, and now I'm not like that no more, but that's okay. And then the third thing that I would advise is really finding a group of people to help support you, because the first time I had my cancer journey, I was so young. I really didn't find a lot of support groups that were for my age or people that I feel like could relate to me, because I live in Texas. And so like a lot of those things only consist of like older white women. So I didn't really feel like I didn't belong. But now that I was more open and about my story, Ricky messaged me. Ricky found me. I didn't find her. And I feel like just doing events with her has really been like a support group for me. So, yes.
Fantastic.
God found us together, that's all. Right.
Yes.
Okay, Cicely.
Oh, wow. I thought I was coming last, but that's okay. So as we said, I am coming up on my 12th year of being cancer free.
Woo.
To God be the glory, really. I was diagnosed in 2009, and I guess a little something different about my story is that my husband is healthcare. He's a physician. He's an OBGYN, so he's women's healthcare. And so I had someone to navigate all the weeds of breast cancer for me. As I mentioned to Ricky before, I rarely tell my story, and not because there's some, altruistic or any big story behind it. It's essentially there's a feeling of guilt that comes with being 11 years cancer-free with triple negative. I look at my story as only a blip in time because, and I don't know if it's because I choose not to stay in that place, but I look back at it and I'm like, okay, we got over that hurdle and now let's live life. And there's that guilt because this is a big one. I think one of the things that I didn't know when I was diagnosed was that there were different types of breast cancer. I thought, you got breast cancer, you got breast cancer. And so I'm asking all these people, what was your experience? What was your experience? And everybody has their own story because there are different stages and grades and types. And so I had never heard of triple negative breast cancer. And I think because my husband is this healthcare provider and a wonderful man who did guide me through, I think there was some level of, hey, I got you. But at the same time, I didn't know, I didn't have the information. And I can remember the day that I came home after my surgery and I had bilateral mastectomy. I hit it hard. If it was coming at me, I was going to hit it just as hard as it was going to try to hit me. So I did the bilateral mastectomy. I did radiation. At the time, there weren't as many therapies that we have now. I think I did ACT, adriamycin, size something, and Taxol.
Toxin, you got it.
Yeah.
Right, blip in time. I threw that out too. But I can remember hearing him talk to my doctor, who's also a good friend of mine, and his partner. And they were talking about triple negative, and they were talking about the prognosis, and they were talking about the severity of it. And I can remember screaming, saying, why didn't you tell me? Well, like, why don't I know this? Why don't I know that this is this serious? And that was the beginning of my journey through. But again, 12 years, 8 I can't even remember how long it was, but I do know that it was from about July through December of chemo and then radiation. And that 5-year pit where they tell you, you know, you're okay, but you still have this 5 years to get through. And I think that 5-year period was probably the whole for me, because I was feeling good, was feeling okay, but it was almost walking around with this time bomb. Is it gonna go off again? And so every ache, every pain, every little bump or bruise, I'm thinking, is that cancer? Is that cancer? Not realizing, hey, you didn't feel it before. You're probably not gonna feel it this time. But it's that PTSD that never really goes away. Living my life, living it fully, feeling very grateful and blessed and living it to the fullest, but there's still that little, ooh, even up to 12 years, you still wonder if it could rear its ugly head again. But 12 years, we can do this, we can do this.
12 years, 12 years. That's awesome. Latanya.
Oh gosh, I was hoping you didn't call me. This is always so emotional for me. So chemo brain is real. You want me to tell my story first, right?
Yeah, we got you.
So I am Latanya Davis, and I am oh my God, which month? I'm actually a 4-year triple negative breast cancer survivor. And crazy enough, I lost my mother to triple negative breast cancer in 1993 while I was in graduate school. And 6 months prior to my diagnosis in 2016, I lost my sister to metastatic triple negative breast cancer. And my sister, of course, had lost her husband like 3 years prior to her death. And her and my nephew were asleep in the bed, and she woke up, and her husband unfortunately had a heart attack. So when my sister passed, you know, her at that time 11-year-old son was now without both of his parents, and I became his legal guardian, and he calls me Lala, so that's my neph's son. And it was like, as you can imagine, devastating. You know, here I am, my only sister. You know, I'm a super strong woman, like have always had like really high profile corporate marketing roles. And honestly, to this day, I really haven't had a chance to crumble, because like, who has time for that, you know? And I initially was not even diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, because the blood work and the screens were showing that it was close, but I was initially diagnosed as HER2 positive, and I was on the traditional, I guess, planning, you know, protocols for HER2 positive. And, you know, thank God, you know, I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but thank God that I knew my mother and my sister's type of breast cancer, because I was able to communicate that to both my oncologist and my breast surgeon. And my oncologist was the one that said, you know what, I just find it really odd that both your mother and sister were triple negative and you're not. And so thank God for Agendia. You know, Agendia has a, oh my God, it's escaping me.
I know where you're going with this. Yep.
Mammoprint, the mammoprint and the blueprint. Thank God for my oncologist. Thank God for God. And thank God for the mammoprint and the blueprint, because that test, the fact that she ran that test actually confirmed that I actually was in fact triple negative. So as soon as she realized that, I was actually, my treatment was changed, and of course started receiving the Red Devil. And in fact, like about a month ago, I was a guest speaker for Agendia's national global sales meeting. And you know, it still just blows my mind to say like, oh my God, because I'm just so grateful that I was educated, because unfortunately my mother and my sister are not here. And I remember when my sister got diagnosed, the first thing you do, you know, it's like I went on Google and I was always looking, and Karen, like as I was sharing with you earlier, it's one of the things that I even did after losing my sister. It's like I was trying to find a triple negative breast cancer survivor who was still here, because for me it's like, oh my God, you know, I have to be here for my nephew. So, you know, meeting you and of course one of my other really good friends, Valencia, who's not here, and of course Ricky, it's like, oh my God, it just gives you hope because you read all the doom and gloom about the triple negative prognosis. And unfortunately, you know, my mother and my sister, which, you know, to be totally honest, sometimes I have survivor's guilt because I'm like, they should be here, you know? And I honestly would have switched places with my sister if God would have let me do such a thing. But I'm grateful that I was educated and, you know, I was able to communicate that to my oncologist so that I can be here. And now I'm committed to doing what I can to save lives, you know, especially in, you know, the communities of women of color. And in fact, next week I'm launching, so proud to be launching a global mammography tour that is going to travel the country. I'm a Delta doc. I know you're my sister. I'm actually doing it in collaboration. Eventually, it's actually as you know, one of my best friends is the AKA, but I'm actually doing it in collaboration. Eventually, it will include, you know, the Divine Nine, but it's going to be really, really amazing. And I'm super excited because my approach to marketing is always to go where the customers are. And I'm a firm believer in bringing pop culture into everything because you know, most people, they only want to think about breast cancer during October. And, you know, for me and understanding the statistics as they relate to African-American women and women of color, they're super aggressive. And, you know, just talking about it in October is not going to work. So for me, I'm pulling up in the inner cities, football games, wherever all of my relationships are. And I'm blessed to have a lot of amazing relationships. And I have so many people on board. They're like, can we just get out of this pandemic? So that's my little herstory. Thank you so much.
I love that so much. Let me know how I can support you. That's fantastic.
Talk about the Breast Talk Ever.
Oh, and of course, Doc, you know you're on my list. I just haven't had a chance to circle back with you. So I also launched a podcast. Ricky, is this where you want me to tell my 3 things or is that later?
You can tell them whenever.
Okay. So as a result of all of this cancer, this, you know, disruption in my life, you know, I was torn between, because, you know, when my sister, you know, we got the news that unfortunately the clinical trial that she was on was no longer working, and it just was not good. You know, at the time I was actually a brand manager for Absolute vodka for duty free, and I was like, you know, I have to go be with my sister. So of course all these things happened. And then once I was diagnosed, I'm like, okay, God, like this is crazy. So I was at a crossroads, you know, and I was telling my oncologist, I'm like, look, I want to do this, I'm going to do this. And she was like, no, slow down. She was like, this red devil is going to take over. And because the first day after my first chemo, I was like, after I received the red devil, because I'm also a former athlete, I ran track in college. I was literally on South Beach. I live like 5 blocks from the beach. I was in the sand, like running. And she was like, are you crazy? But it was my mind, that athlete mentality that honestly got me through. So she was like, no, I need you to get, you know, go through all of your surgeries. Cause I also had a double mastectomy with Recon, and, you know, I'm super proud of my Mentor implants. They look really nice. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what is it, you know, what am I going to do? So one of the things that happened as a result of losing my sister, not really wanting to burden my friends and my family was, you know, I got lost in podcasts. And, you know, NPR, I've always been like an NPR narrative style radio lover. And there's a podcast called How I Built This, and it's hosted by Guy Raz, and he features entrepreneurs. They tell their stories, and it's just really amazing. And that was what like got me through like those tough nights when I was thinking about like, I just buried my 43-year-old sister, like not even 45, 43. And hearing those entrepreneur stories like gave me that like push, like you can do this, you got this. So in the process of doing that, I started Googling like, oh my God, when my hair started coming out, it's like, okay, looking for all these different resources. And I discovered like survivors who had created a business. And one of them, of course, was Dana Donofree, who's like turns out to be one of my really, really good friends now. And I was like, wait a minute, are there enough of them to create a business? Because I felt like, you know, I could create a similar model that could be inspirational for both the survivor and just anyone, you know, surviving the business called life. And it turns out that it was. Long story short, NPR, you know, then announced a fellowship. I actually was selected. I'm one of their first inaugural fellows for the How I Built This program. And so I have a podcast, and I feature survivors who created a business as a result of their diagnosis. And I'm so proud of Dana Donofree, because Anna Ono was on The View today, and she's just doing amazing things. So the format of the show is you hear the story of the diagnosis, and then there's the aha moment. And it's really like a resource, for the survivor, but it's also inspirational. So that is called the Breast Talk Ever. So I basically incorporated all of those things into like my marketing strategy. And the three things that I guess I would say in terms of what I wish I knew, I wish I knew that chemo brain was real, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna be fine. But it's real. Like, I literally had to make notes here just so I can remember, like, what is it I'm gonna say here? And then I would definitely say, like, the makeup part for me, I dressed up for every chemo session, because when I looked in the mirror, I kept seeing my sister and my mother. So I had to do something to like make myself feel like, okay, you know what, even though your skin is like literally like black, like I wanted to feel beautiful. So I felt like myself. And then I would definitely say, like, maintain a sense of, try to do things that will allow you to feel like, to maintain who you are. And for me, that was continuing to do marketing stuff. And like that for me, like even with the podcast, I don't want to talk about cancer all day. And like I tell Ricky this all the time, like if I'm going to talk about cancer, I have to do it in a way that allows me to use my talents, because it's heavy. Like in the reality, and I know I can keep it 100 with everyone that's listening, I lost both my mother and my sister, and I'm a triple negative diagnosee. So I'm always constantly thinking about, and I hate saying this because my nephew can hear this, but I'm constantly thinking about, what if it comes back? Like you were saying, Cecily. And so I don't want to spend my every day talking about cancer, but I'm like, you know what? This isn't about me. I want to help as many women as I can and save their lives. And I want to work with organizations that genuinely want to work with us, and not just post the black square because it's cool and it's the political thing to do. But now, fast forward to now, where was that black square, that talk in January? But that's a whole nother Facebook Live. So for me,
Keep it real, preach.
oh yeah, and the thing that I will say I love about having the time to not jump into something, it gave me a chance to really see which organizations are really truly about us, because I'm a corporate marketer, and I know real, and I know like you're doing this because you need to fulfill a KPI, but you're not in the hood. I live in Miami. I'm 30 minutes away from Liberty City, and I'm comfortable going into any inner city anywhere in the US. So for me, it's so important that I am still doing marketing work, because otherwise I wouldn't want to do this, because it's so heavy. And every week there's someone that we know, there's a degree of separation between the survivor that we got close to that dies. So that's my story. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I'm a praying woman, and I pray every night. And I'm just grateful that we all are here to be here to tell our story and to hopefully to inspire others.
Wow.
Thank you, my love. Thank you.
That's
love you.
fantastic. And you said something so really important. Two things. One, you said you finally realize and acknowledge that everybody's breast cancer is different, even within triple negative, right? And I think it's so important that you're able to, even though you talk about cancer and you're immersed in it. And I know that, we hold the belief that our life follows our thoughts, right? But you've changed your thoughts. Your story is not your mother's story. Your story is not your sister's story, right? And like making that transition is so important to your health and to your mission and to your focus and your wellness, because a lot of us get stuck there. We've seen what happens to our loved ones and to our friends, but their stories are not your stories. And so I'm just so glad that you guys are sharing that your narrative has power in and of itself.
Yeah. All right, Miss Sharon.
Me. Okay, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to see everybody because it is Triple Negative Day. So I was diagnosed in 2015, triple negative, going on May will be 6 years. And I'm going to talk about something I hadn't heard anyone mention. I would have not admit this in 2015. but I was scared of everything. I was scared of the machine. It was the chicken. I have a picture of this chicken, just look all wow, that was in the doctor's office. And I thought I was going to look exactly like that chicken. Well, let me back up. I didn't think I would be here to even talk to anybody. So that's the first thing. It's like when you go to school, the first thing you kind of learn 1 + 1 = 2. So when you hear the word cancer, you automatically think of death. But scientists have came a long way. It can be a death sentence, but not necessarily. So I was totally just so afraid. So what I did was got a second opinion and a third opinion, because I was looking for someone to tell me I did not need chemo. I had convinced myself, and I think with a diagnosis cancer, we go through a grieving process. And once we accept it, that's when we are ready for treatment. So I was up and down 95, had all these appointments, putting my tumor on a slide, overnighting it to one of the major hospitals because I knew the lab had made a mistake. So finally, I had to accept that they were saying the same thing. Not reading the report, another lab was testing the tumor. So I end up removing the lump, getting chemo, and I actually got 14 rounds because I could not get 16 rounds because of the nerve damage from Taxol. And I have permanent nerve damage. You'll barely know it because I don't let that hold me back. So after that, it was radiation. Now, radiation had this big old machine. It's not going anywhere, but I had convinced myself that the machine was going to fall on me. So they let me in, they let me touch it. In my head, the machine was going to fall on me. So I end up doing partial radiation, which is 5 days a week, twice a day. And as of December 2019, it has been proven that it's just as successful as full radiation. So when you talk about burns and skin burning and fatigue, I know nothing about that because that did not happen. But after that, finally everything was over and I settled down a little bit. I was looking at Good Morning America and they was talking about a clinical trial and I wanted to know more. And the clinical trial that I actually qualified for, because you actually have to qualify for a clinical trial. It was in California and I'm actually in Virginia. And I had to travel to California every 90 days. I was under the impression I only had to do that twice because that same clinical trial was going to open up in Sloan Kettering, which is in New York, is an 8-hour drive from Virginia. Well, that didn't happen. But my grandmother used to always tell me, where there's a will, there's a way. I had no clue how I was getting to California, but I knew I was going to get there. So it's the firm here that my daughter-in-law work at. She mentioned it and they started giving points and raising money and they got me there. After the second trip, I heard about another clinical trial that was in the University of Penn, which is only a 4-hour drive. And I was accepted in that clinical trial. And that's when one of the nurses suggested, I would always bring stuff for patients. And she said, why don't you start a nonprofit? And I wanted to know what was the benefit of that. And she said, well, you don't really have to go in your pocket and all that. So I did that. I started a nonprofit giving back to the cancer community. And then I got involved in research. Now, once I got involved in research, I definitely noticed there wasn't a lot of people that look like me at all. In fact, when you look at clinical trial, it's less than 5% African Americans that participate in clinical trial. I personally believe that I'm here today due to Jesus Christ, but also due to clinical trials. So I have a big voice when it comes to participating in clinical trial. I know we're not talking about the COVID vaccine, but that to me, that's a trial too. And I 150% support that as well, because I think that we need to make a difference with every type of new drug or new treatment, like the partial radiation. sure, you can try it on mouse and different things, but you need humans as well. So cancer is not pretty. It's nothing pretty about cancer at all. So if we really try to make a difference in find a cure, we have to try different things. And I'm still being followed by University of Penn. I'm still in that clinical trial. And in fact, and it's all different types of clinical trial. It's exercise, it's different things. But with that clinical trial, I did get another year of chemotherapy. And the reason I'm smiling, because I don't think it's no one in the world that was more afraid of chemo than I was. So for me to enter a trial and to take more chemo is just unheard of. So there is hope out there, definitely hope. And basically that's my story. And what else do you want me to talk about?
That's awesome. That's awesome that you were brave enough to do a trial, to seek it out. And we all need to be doing more of that. We need more science. So thank you, Ms. Sharon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole. I am 41 years old, but at the age of 40, I was diagnosed with triple negative stage 2B breast cancer. And at the time, I found my lump breastfeeding. My daughter just turned 10 months old. I have two girls who at the time was 10 months, and then the other was 3 years old. And so when I found my lump, I thought it was a clogged milk duct. It definitely did not alarm me right away, but unfortunately, it didn't go away. It became painful, and it turned into, testing, mammogram, ultrasound, then biopsy, and then bam, I'm being told over the phone, holding my 10-month-old and having my other daughter, who was 3 again, at my side, that I have breast cancer. And it literally felt like someone socked me in the throat and the stomach at the same time. That's just the best way I can describe it. It was a complete shock, because I felt like some of these women on this panel, breast cancer did not run in my family. It was something that I've never seen. I didn't know anybody who had breast cancer, or anyone who looked like me, really, who had breast cancer. So for me, the disease itself was, in my head, an older, middle-aged to older white woman disease. Because on the TV or pamphlets and things like that, that's all I saw. And so it wasn't something that ever in my life I was checking for. So it definitely took me by surprise. It took my whole family by surprise. And from there, it's just like a whirlwind. The tornado, as I call it, started, to where, I went through 5 months of chemo. That was hard. I have a dear friend, Shelvana, who is another breast cancer survivor, triple negative, and she just said flat, it just gave me the real raw truth about what chemo is, because my doctor didn't. I wasn't really prepared for the classic, just everything, your nails turning black, being probably shot into like a menopause state. Of course, your hair falling out, but just the nerve pain, the bone pain, just everything, and how to manage that, as being a mother. And then at the time, I was a wife and everything. It was just hard. It was a really hard period, but God is so good, because he blessed me in my life with people who really define what love is. My mother, my aunt, friends, church family, they all just came in, shipping me meals, cooking, caring for me, caring for my kids. So it was a blessing. So after the chemo, I had to have surgery. I went ahead and decided on a double mastectomy. That was a decision that was hard, because it was like, should I not? My left breast was the one that was affected with the cancer, but I went ahead and said, I don't want to go through this again. So I did the double mastectomy, and that was a journey. I wasn't expecting to have 5 drains coming out of my chest. But, you know, the Lord, he gets you through it. And, you know, from there, unfortunately, like I said, I was married at the time. I'm going through a divorce. You know, my marriage ended. My husband served me with divorce papers after my mastectomy, and, you know, I had to keep moving. God said, keep moving. So I had to finish my treatment. I had 28 rounds of radiation. I was not prepared for radiation. I was told you're gonna have some skin changes. No one told me burns, as if I've been through a fire. And literally my skin's burnt from my neck all the way down. And it came off, and it was excruciating. It was painful. And every time you have to hold this position as a mannequin for, you know, 20 minutes or so under that machine. So that was a tough process. And then after that, you know, thankfully, you know, you're done with your treatment. But, you know, I'm glad to be on this panel. It's so humbling, because a lot of people feel like you get that cancer-free diagnosis afterwards. You know, you had a good pathologic response and your mission is done. But many women have already expounded that for the next 3 to 5 years, you're under this anxiety umbrella of praying to the good Lord above to keep it gone. So those that have made that mark of 4 or 5 plus years, to God be the glory, because it is a constant battle of anxiety. I just had my 3-month cancer screening, my first, and I was praying almost twice a day. You know, and it was a long, grueling process that on Monday, getting everything done. But, you know, to God be the glory still, you know. And so for me, you know, I would say my big 3 things is know your treatment. I had to go through 2 different teams of doctors through my journey. My first team started off here close to my area, and they did kind of fail me because they didn't prepare me a lot. I was lost a lot, meaning that I felt like I was out in the middle of the sea in the dark with no life vest and nowhere to go. Like, am I going to die or live? So definitely, you know your treatment. And when I say know your treatment, know what the drugs that they are putting in your body, because we are human. Doctors make mistakes, and so does their staff. And I almost was given the wrong chemo that I was allergic to, that was changed. So because I knew that I wasn't supposed to get that chemo anymore, and I knew that the chemo dose changed, you know, it saved my life. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to switch teams. I didn't want to offend anybody. I wanted to trust the doctors, but they were failing me. So I literally, when the Lord says move, move. And if it means 3 hours away, which that's where my team is now, 3 hours away from me, I do what I have to do because it's your life. And so that's something else I recommend. And then the other thing is vulnerability. The Lord has taught me, and he's teaching me through this whole process of what true love is, clearly defined through people coming into my life, from my mom, my aunt, friends, strangers, who are there to help me. That vulnerability, sometimes it's opening the mouth and saying, I don't feel okay today, and be okay with that. I don't feel pretty today, and be okay with that. Because you do go through storms and waves. Sometimes you're good and sometimes you're low, but that vulnerability factor is that sometimes people don't know how to care for cancer patients. They're scared to even ask you what you need. And they don't even know what to say. to you. So sometimes we have to be the ones to voice it out. And no, the other thing I would say is, regardless of your skin changing, your nails turning black, your hair falling out, you are beautiful. My 3-year-old, who is now 5, she told me that when I lost my hair, I thought she was going to look at me strange. She said, "Mommy, you're beautiful." When I lost my breast, I was scared to show her. By changing, I would have her ushered out of the room. She fought her way in. She just looked at me with licking on the lollipop. She blinked a couple times, but then she just smiled and walked away. She saw me as who I am. And I was scared to show that, this new me. But my daughter showed me that you are still beautiful. You're still mommy. And so for that, I'm utterly grateful. And so thank you for allowing me, Ricky, and also Dr. Mo, to share my story again. And, this is beautiful. This is the face of breast cancer, triple negative. I didn't see that. And I still don't out there in the real world, as we call it. So this is lovely to see everybody, because this is what we look like.
Thank you.
This is the real world, and you are out there and showing what beauty and strength and perseverance looks like. And I thank all of you. Wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Nicole, wow, to your story, and also that don't feel alone about feeling the anxiety and pressure, because it is shown in statistics that cancer survivors 0 to 2 years after surviving, they have a lot of mental health issues or are dealing with mental health problems. So you're not alone.
I want to ask that question because, as a doctor, I see my cancer patients, especially my triple negatives, every 6 months for the first 5 years, right? And I've heard a number of you say that those first 5 years is so full of anxiety, it's so full of worry and fear. And I wonder 2 things. 1, is anybody addressing that with you at these appointments? And 2, is there anything that could make that better? Because I think I always thought that it was a reassurance and that it was a good thing, because once you hit 5 years, you're only seeing us once a year at best. And that's a different level of anxiety, because now who's watching twice a year, right? So help me understand what can make this better, if anything?
Dr. Mo, I'm happy to answer that question. I do not allow my doctors to release me. I see someone every 3 months, and that's just my level of anxiety. I mean, they'll try to push it off, and I can't. I mean, I'm not that comfortable yet. So every 3 months, even in between, I'm still seeing UPenn because I'm in the clinical trial, but I am not comfortable with once a year at all. And even with the 5 years, I'll be honest with you, I'm not comfortable, because that, to me, that used to be the case many, many years ago. That's not the case now, but you still have to keep on living. You can't, you almost compare it. Well, it may not be a good comparison, because, if you get in an accident, do you get back up and start driving, or do you get back on the bike? So you can't sit around and just say, what if? But my God, it's still not down, and I'm going on 6 years, and I still hadn't been released. If they have to justify it, I'll make up something to go in, but I am not comfortable with no once a year, not at all. So that's just me. So the anxiety it's just comfortable knowing that, okay, like I'm already seeing somebody in March. I already know who I'm seeing. So they'll take turns. So they'll rotate between the radiology, the oncologist. I still see my surgeon, so that's just my opinion.
You're not alone.
I feel like my second diagnosis made me more comfortable, as crazy as it sounds. You'd think like after your second diagnosis, you'd be more paranoid about those things. But I feel like I realized that I do have to start living my life, and I have to stop worrying about like it coming back and stuff like that. Because I don't want that to be the focus of my survivorship. I don't want that to define my survivorship as well.
Wow.
Well, I had my first diagnosis, and then 8 years later, I got my second diagnosis. So I don't think that 5 years, it's something that's put out there as a statistic. But I thought by having stage 0 in 2008, I said, okay, well, 5 years later, I'm like, oh, that's a fluke. Even though I had a family history, two aunts and my mother both had cancer. I didn't know it was different kinds either. I don't even know what kind they had, but I had 2 aunts and a mother that had breast cancer twice. And so in 2016, when it came back and it was triple negative, I'm like, I really don't have a comfortableness with saying 5 years, I'm good, because it just showed me, I just experienced that 5 years, it came back worse. It came back as triple negative. So.
But wasn't triple negative the first diagnosis?
No, I had DCIS, the stage 0, the first time.
Did they put you on tamoxifen or any of those estrogen blockers, or were the receptors negative?
They did not put me on because I was diabetic and I was overweight, and they said that it was a 50-50 chance, and they just said they would monitor me. And, I kept getting the MRIs and the regular testing, and I have to be thankful for mammograms because it saved my life twice. I had no pain or anything. It was the mammograms that saved my life twice.
Keep going, Shin. Keep going. You go.
Okay. Okay. So in 2016, I got my diagnosis. I had already made up my mind that if cancer ever came back again, that I would have a bilateral mastectomy. And that's what I did. And I tried to look for the rainbow. And I said, oh, well, I can get a tummy tuck and I can get firm breasts, and I'm just going to be the sexiest thing out there, right? I'm like, so I go to the plastic surgeon and they look at my history and they said, I have a clotting disorder. And they were saying that I couldn't have the deep flap because before the nerve endings healed, I would start clotting and my skin would start rotting. So they said we would try the inflators. And so when I got the inflators put in, at the same time I had the double mastectomy, I ended up getting infection in both breasts. So then I had to have additional surgery to remove the inflators and remove the infected tissue. And as a result of that, one of those drains was not working right. So I ended up with wound care, needing wound care. I had to have an emergency procedure in the doctor's office, and I ended up having wound care. And they were, it took quite a while for the wound to heal because they didn't want to start my chemo because they said the chemo would blow up my wound. It would be worse. But yet I was getting into that time frame. They said between 8 and 12 weeks after surgery that I needed to start my chemo. One of my girlfriends told me about, I can't even think of the name, it's made by Ensure, but I started taking that. And the day when I got my port in, somehow miraculously, through the grace of God, I was healed the day of surgery. So I got my port put in and went on through my treatments like everybody else, that Red Devil, the ACT, and completed treatment in July, celebrated my 60th birthday that year, and tried to look forward to other reconstructions, but I have not done that yet. And I'm still dealing with my body appearance, because I have several scars as a result of the surgeries, but also because I'm plump, a thick madam. People, they want to say, am I pregnant? So now I'm in the process of having surgery that will take care of that. So, but I'm still looking at maybe down the line, having surgery. I have these dog flaps that they left in the back. Do you all have that? Do you all have the dog flaps? You do? Okay, yeah. So I was like, I think that's because I had a male plastic surgeon.
I don't know that I call them dog flaps, but now I have a new name for them, I
Yeah, I
guess.
think that dog flaps, dog ears, dog ears.
That is what they call them. They call them dog ears because they
Dog ears, yeah.
The doggy ears.
Yeah, so I think they said they maybe can move them to the front. Is that true? So I'm looking at that possibly down the road, but or either doing a tattoo, something cute or whatever. But it's been a challenge because of my health and my weight. And of course, like I said, the clotting disorder that I have that prohibit me from getting the deep flap. So that's my story briefly. But
Did they
I
pair you
did,
with a nutritionist? Do you have a nutritionist?
yes, I'm going to up to Howard. I go up to Howard University. Our with HBCU for our VP, Madam VP. So I'm like, okay. My doctor was like, "What are you doing up there? You know, what are you doing at Howard?" Because she sent me to Sibley for my third. She wanted to go to Sibley. You know, that is when I found out I had a grade 3 because I did not know that TNBCs had grades as well. So I had started off with a stage 1, and before I had surgery, it was stage 2. And when I went for my third opinion, that's when they told me it was a grade 3 triple negative breast cancer. But anyway, I want to say my little 3 things. I wrote them down because I didn't always have to do them to just now, but I wish I knew about ice treatments ahead of time. I understand that the ice treatments would help reduce the neuropathy that, you know, we deal with in our extremities, in which I don't know if you all are, but I'm still dealing with neuropathy in my feet and in the
I
very
know
tips
two
of my
good
fingers.
vitamins. I know two
You,
good vitamins that help with neuropathy that I took during chemo, and it really did take my neuropathy away.
oh,
So
okay. Okay, you know, I'd be
What
interested
is
in
the
that. I know they
cat
had
food?
me taking vitamin B complexes, but that didn't work for me. But I would be definitely interested in hearing about those 2 vitamins. And the second thing that I would wish I had taken the shingles vaccine, because by me having chickenpox as a child and then getting chemo, I ended up with shingles during my treatment. So I think, you know, I'm like, how do I have 9 or 10 doctors and nobody tells me to take a shingles vaccine? So I wish I had done that. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten shingles, but luckily it didn't do any nerve damage to my eyes, you know, because it came up on my left side and, you know, through my face down on my back. So, of course, I had to get my eyes checked and make sure it was no damage to my vision and so forth. But I wish I had gotten the shingles vaccine. Also, the last thing, of course, has to deal with my weight. I didn't realize by being overweight and having poor eating habits that contributes to your chances of getting cancer. So those would be the 3 things that if anybody, you know, wanted to take note of, I would recommend those 3 things along with what, you know, everybody else said. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks, Shin. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. We're losing Denisha. So Karen, warrior.
Hey, Ricky. Hey, everybody. I can give you a brief synopsis of my story that's been documented so many times. I'm a 6-year triple negative breast cancer survivor. I am 4 years metastatic triple negative breast cancer survivor, which is I'm just grateful, very grateful for that. I was diagnosed in 2015 with stage 1, grade 3 triple negative breast cancer. I went through lumpectomy and then chemotherapy for 4 treatments. I think I did the ACT. And I did that because I was afraid of heart issues with the other chemo I had heard about. So I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I really didn't understand anything about triple negative. I thought all breast cancers were the same. I had no idea. I was like a deer in headlights. Most of the decisions that I made during that time were emotional, as we all know, because emotional cancer can be very emotional. And eventually I decided that I didn't want anything else to do with my breast. And I decided on a voluntary double mastectomy in August of 2015. And I did forego radiation at the time. I was just trying to lower the percentages. I'm a numbers person. And my breast surgeon at the time indicated that there would be a reduced risk if I had the mastectomy. It wouldn't reduce it to 0, but it would reduce it to like 4%. So I figured, man, I'd go with that. That sounds pretty good to me. And I really just wanted to walk away from cancer. Totally didn't want anything to do with it. I was trying to reinvent myself. When I hear you ladies talk, you're just so powerful, and I'm listening and I'm thinking about I can remember what it was like sitting in that chair getting chemotherapy and, you know, putting my hands in ice for an hour and my feet in ice for an hour, because I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't come out of it with the side effects of neuropathy. And luckily I did. But I can remember putting them in bedpans and whatever I could get my hands on before it. And I can remember losing my hair and remembering thinking, you know, I don't look my best, I don't feel my best, but I'm just gonna go get through it. And everything I was doing was emotional. And I moved on. But sadly, in 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 4 triple negative breast cancer. And breast cancer runs in my family. My grandmother passed away at the age of 44 from metastatic and breast and ovarian cancer. So I wasn't really quite sure what I was going to do, but I knew that I had to change the narrative. And so incredibly, I had the foresight to realize that I had to do a lot of research and educate myself, because triple negative breast cancer is different for everyone. Like I might want to go to Walmart, and Ricky may want to go to Target, and it's just different for everyone. And in order to be able to understand and be able to make decisions, informed decisions based on my tumor makeup and my story and my narrative and my health history, I needed to get some information. So I went and got a second opinion, and thank goodness for a research oncologist. I met her in New York City. She was doing some research. I told her I think something was wrong. I didn't even have a metastatic diagnosis at the time, but she saw me anyway. And I brought my slide. She took a look at the slide and she says, you know, you have these things called a lot of fighter cells. You have a lot of fighter cells. And no one had ever told me that. Not from 2015 to 2017, that I actually had something that was valuable. Even though I was diagnosed metastatic, I had a crowd of fighter cells. And she said, you know, you might want to think about immunotherapy, but in order to make an informed decision about whatever you want to do, whatever it is, whether you want to do standard of care, whether you want to go into a clinical trial, I think you should move forward and have genomic testing. So I took all this information back to my original oncologist, and I didn't let on that I was talking to someone else, that I had been talking to a research oncologist. And my original oncologist sort of, you know, dismissed me when I asked about genomic testing. And she said, you should exhaust all standard conventional care. And if you do that and it doesn't work, then we can talk about the things you want to talk about. And I can remember thinking, she said something about, hey, you did mention clinical trials. What about like, I think a phase 3 trial? And I was like, that's randomized, because I've been talking and doing my research, and on stage 4. Nothing against randomized trials, but I needed the medicine. I needed phase 1. In addition to that, if I understood the exclusionary criteria, and that's something that isn't talked about a lot. When they talk about clinical trials, they talk about, you know, the fact that we aren't in them, meaning African Americans. There's a low percentage of us participating, but there's also these things called exclusionary criteria that keep us out, even when we want to be involved. And here I had my oncologist telling me, let's exhaust all standard conventional care, but standard care wasn't going anywhere. I needed you to help me make an informed decision. And you were my gatekeeper, my collaborator, and you were keeping me from the things that I needed to make an informed decision. And when she said that, I said, but I've been looking at this exclusionary criteria. And it said, if you had 2 lines of treatment after being diagnosed metastatic, I wouldn't be eligible for a trial. So what are we talking about here? What are we doing here? And at that moment, she realized I had been talking to somebody else. And she said, oh, you've been talking to, what have they said? And I revealed who I'd been talking to. And all of a sudden, my words became valuable. All of a sudden now, she wanted to see and hear what my plans were. And I was like, wow, you've been with me for 2 years, and I feel like I'm being betrayed at this moment. Like, this can't possibly be. It's a woman. We're human. You've seen me through my worst. You've seen me with no hair. You've seen me with no breast. You've seen me stripped of everything. And now you want to stand before me and take that away? And I'm talking about making an informed decision. That's what I'm talking about, information. She was trying to block me from that. And I have no idea why, but I moved on. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just took my life and I moved across town, and I collaborated with the research oncologist. We got the genomic testing, and those sequence of events were very important because the genomic testing revealed that I had mutations that may be causing the cancer. And this is informed information I wouldn't have had I not had the test. So I felt like it was very important to not only advocate for yourself, but at the same time, try to understand the sequence of events and the science behind it. It's always why, but sometimes it's also how and what and how these things work together. So I had the fighter cells, I had the genomic testing, and then I said, okay, I'm going to go after a trial that's going to help me build that fighter cell, that army that I have, and help me move forward and stay alive. And sure enough, after weeks and weeks of searching and searching, I approached a principal investigator, and I let him know that I was interested in a trial, and did he have anything for me, specifically dealing with my fighter cells and the fact that I had them, and I needed something to blaze the path in order to be able to stay alive. And so he said, you know what, I have something coming down the pipeline. It hasn't been listed on clinicaltrials.gov yet. Would you be interested? You have no idea what that felt like. Somebody actually giving me hope. Somebody actually giving me my life back. And so I was patient number one in the trial. I was the only patient to have a complete response after about 2 years. I haven't been on anything since 2019. And what I really want to say today is that your voice is valuable. You deserve to be heard. You deserve respect and dignity. You deserve to feel as if the most inconsequential question is important. Just the simplest thing. And if you can't find someone who can do that for you, find a support network, because I did it by myself. And that's something I would recommend for anybody, to go out there and try and backdoor your way into a clinical trial. It was literally a miracle what happened, but that's not something I would recommend. Build your tribe, find your army, find the support. The Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation is a great place to be. There are lots of women and men and caregivers who are all gathering together to support you. And I think that's really, really important. And lastly, the 3 things that I would recommend if I had to go back to 2015, I think it was important for me to know about subsets, because I can remember when I talked to my second opinion, she says, my God, you're the very first patient I had who ever asked me about that. And triple negative is different. It's the label, but there's so many little subsets, and those subsets, and if you fall into one of those and it's identified, it will change your treatment plan. So it's very important, very, very important. I wish I knew about maintenance drugs. I really do. No one ever offered me that. I hear about it. You know, I've talked to girls and they say, yeah, you know, I'm triple negative and, you know, the margins weren't quite clear after surgery, so I'm on a maintenance drug. That was not offered to me, those things. And lastly, and most importantly, I'm not anti-doctor, but I really think it's important to find a research oncologist, because they're different than a regular oncologist. And that's just my personal opinion. My research oncologist educated me. She had access to research that, for whatever reason, my original oncologist refused to give me, or just didn't participate in. And having the research oncologist in my circle, she educated me and told me about the fact that I had these fighter cells, and told me about the fact that I should think about genomic testing if I wanted to make an informed decision. And, I'm grateful for that, because without that information, I would not be here talking to you. I wouldn't. So I think I'm a fan of clinical trials. I'm a fan of self-advocacy, and I'm a fan of science. And that's about it. Thanks.
And I'm a fan of you.
Oh my goodness,
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of fans of you.
Yeah.
You said some really, really powerful things. And
Yeah.
the interesting and sad thing is that probably 70 to 80% of women get their cancer care at community hospitals, where the doctors either don't know about the trials or don't have access to those trials, or maybe don't have funding for those trials. And so I think the tide is quickly turning. I hope it is, as we go ahead and educate more community doctors about trials, and as we decentralize how we do trials, because they're done in these large academic centers, right? But women getting to these centers can be a hardship. It can be a challenge. It can be intimidating. It can be unwelcoming. There's barriers even to getting to these trials that you have demonstrated so clearly through your story. And you just said something so powerful. You said, I packed up my life and I went across town, packed up my life and just left. And I think that, you know, people who are watching can't be afraid to do that, right? Because you got nothing left to lose at this point, you know? And so learning as much as you can and being bold and trusting yourself, trusting your judgment. You get informed so you have an informed decision, and it's not that trauma-informed judgment. Because you know how that trauma-informed makes you just do things that could be contrary to what you would do, but you get educated, informed, and you make the best decisions for yourself. And every single story is telling the same thing here today, and it's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. All right,
Dr. Mo, I
Denisha.
would always say that you are the captain of your ship, and the other team, the team around you, is the co-captain.
Yeah.
And normally it's the other way around. The doctor's the captain, but you are the captain of your ship. They are co-captain, but Karen is right. You definitely have to educate yourself.
Yeah. 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 All right, Demisha.
Hi, I'm Demisha Portis. I'm 34 years old. I was diagnosed last year at 33. I felt a lump in my breast, and I thought it was just because my cycle was coming on, and the lump never went away after my cycle came off. So luckily, I do have a responsive doctor, and she had me come in. Mind you, this is during COVID, the peak of COVID, when everything is shut down and closed. So she had me come in, and she felt the lump, and she had me immediately set up to go get a mammogram. At my age, we don't get mammograms. They're not going to do it, actually, if you ask for one. So I went to go get a mammogram. They immediately, whatever they saw in the imaging, sent me for a biopsy. The day after my biopsy, I got a call that it was breast cancer. So they told me it was stage 2, triple negative. Again, I didn't, because I was uneducated with the fact that there was different types of breast cancer. I didn't know what that meant. So once they broke it down to me, I just thought there's no cure for this. And so going back to what Karen was speaking of, having a research oncologist, I actually do have a research oncologist, and she set me up with a clinical trial. So I did my 6 months of chemo. I did the Taxol and the Red Devil. I did, one of the most challenging parts of this journey was deciding on getting mastectomy or lumpectomy. And Latanya will tell you, I've called her late night crying about, I don't know what to do. So I did opt for the lumpectomy. Once they did my lumpectomy, I had a complete response, luckily. And so I actually just finished my 20 rounds of chemo shortly after. I finished 2 weeks ago, actually, to tell you the truth. So with this journey, luckily, I have a sister that's only 2 years older than me. So now she's able to get her mammograms now because of me. And what I do wish I would have known back then was my family history, because I would have been did like the genetic testing or been told my doctor about my family history. And I could have been getting my mammograms. We could have caught this earlier, or maybe, hopefully maybe prevented it. I don't know if we could have. Yeah, this journey has just been interesting. I'm actually happy that it happened during COVID, because my mom was able to come down. I'm from Connecticut, I'm in North Carolina. She was able to come down and stay with me during this whole time because she's able to work from home. So it was a perk having COVID during this time. The only downfall was nobody could come into my treatments with me. And that got kind of lonely, and just, when I'm having a moment, nobody's there. And so at this point, I'm just trying to heal, trying to grow. I'm trying to get my self-esteem back because I'm just getting my eyebrows back. I had no eyelashes. My face broke out really bad. My hair starting to grow back. So just trying to get my self-esteem back to where it was. And I'm just trying not to let this cancer take a toll on my mind because it definitely took a toll on all of our bodies. So I'm just trying to not to let it take over my mind right now. So that's my story.
Well, you look great. You look great.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank
Can
you.
I take a poll and ask how many of you were offered genetic testing at the time of your diagnosis?
No, not at the time.
Wow.
Dr. Mo, I forgot to mention this, which I think is an interesting piece. Both my sister and I were tested, as I've shared before with you, Doc, we both were tested and we both were tested, the testing came back that no, there was no genetics that showed we had
Mhm.
BRCA mutation,
Same
which
here.
really stumped, my oncologist and, like the Agendia researchers that I've talked to. So, it's just really odd. I just think and Ricky, what's the other doc, the researcher that works at
Melissa,
yeah, she's so amazing. She's doing amazing work, but apparently because that's the one thing that my sister and I we took those steps to try to make sure that we would be here. And even with doing that, like I was told that I did not have the mutation because I would have totally had a double mastectomy years ago.
you guys, I think there's some science we haven't uncovered yet.
Yeah.
And that's what
I
we're
agree.
focused on
I
because
agree.
Yeah.
there's got to be some reason why Black women get triple negative at twice the rate, and that we're all having all these issues. And so I think we just have more work to do. We have so much more work to do, and that's one thing that I'm going to let Haley talk now, because the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, I'm such a proud board member. I've been on the board really since I was sick, and I reached out to them, and she helped me tremendously in getting treatment and getting care, and even introducing me to other TNBC survivors, which I hadn't met before her. So, but today's Triple Negative Day, and all the money that is being raised is going to triple negative breast cancer research. And it's so important that this foundation is really the go-to place for all of us for every resource, but the fact that their focus is to raise money for research for our disease and solve our issues. So go, Haley. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me here. And wow, I mean, hearing all of your stories, they're just all so powerful. And, as someone who's been doing this since 2006, when my friend Nancy was diagnosed with triple negative, these are stories that I hear over and over again. So every story is unique, but there are certain features of triple negative, finding it when you're pregnant, not being told about clinical trials or about the various options that you have, having a family history, yet no genetic testing. All of these features, all of these parts of your narratives, your individual narratives, they're common. They're unfortunately so common. And it's one of the reasons that I think having a day like Triple Negative Breast Cancer Day is so important, because these stories get lost in October. They get lost when you're talking about other forms of breast cancer, because as Ricky likes to say, triple negative breast cancer patients and survivors are special. There is something unique about this diagnosis, and it's something different. And that's what we try to shine a light on during Triple Negative Breast Cancer Day and all throughout the month of March. And one of the biggest parts of that, one of the biggest pieces, is putting a face and a voice to this disease. And so I want to thank you so much for lending your faces and lending your voices to this discussion. I think, between that and the incredible pieces of advice each of you gave, I think it will help so many women who are newly diagnosed and even, early on in their treatment. So as the TNBC Foundation, we try to be the go-to source for credible information and support from the point of diagnosis all the way through treatment and even in survivorship. So I hope that you know that wherever you are in your journey, you can come to us as the foundation. We have a menu of resources, all types of webinars, teleconferences that provide an education on everything from fear of recurrence, which a lot of you talked about, to clinical trials, to all aspects of the breast cancer journey, the triple negative breast cancer journey specifically. We have financial assistance programs. We have free clinical trials matching services, a telephone helpline that's staffed by oncology social workers that are specifically trained to help women with triple negative disease. And we even have discussion forums both on our website and our official social media where people just like you, no matter where they are in their treatment, they can find someone who's going through what they're going through or who has gone through it and can really help guide them. So I really hope you take advantage of all these resources. And again, thank you so, so much for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's incredible, Haley. Amazing work that your organization does. I refer patients nearly every day to the Triple Negative Foundation because it's always such reliable, up-to-date, supportive, encouraging, and it's 360 support. It really is. When you look at what people need, it's not just providing facts and statistics. It's not just providing sounding boards and support groups, but there's information about nutrition and wellness and psychosocial things, financial navigation, which is huge, right? Nobody budgets for breast cancer. I don't care how many vacations we all missed during COVID and everything else. This wasn't in anybody's budget, and so providing that 360 support, especially for this unique type of cancer, is it's just something that's it's priceless, really. I have a question for all of you. We talk a lot about not knowing the subtypes of breast cancer, not knowing the details. What time, what place, when would that education have been useful to you? What can we as a medical community do better and different in terms of education before you get breast cancer? How can we, what are your thoughts on some ways to educate women?
I think personally in school, like we have health in school, we learn about,
Yeah.
Women parts, men's parts. I feel like that needs to be a topic now.
I would definitely agree. I was just speaking to the other day. Someone had told me that someone passed away from lung cancer, and I was like, oh, was it small cell or non-small cell? And they was like, who would know that? And I was
Right.
like, well, we know different kinds of breast cancer, so shouldn't we know different kinds of like all types of cancers? And I feel like that should be something that's spoken out, because like not every cancer is the same. HER2 positive is not the same as triple negative, and triple positive isn't the same as triple negative. Like everything is completely different.
Yeah, I think in school, I think we should be talking about breast health. In school, you should know it when you're doing sex education, because young women need to start checking their breasts. I'm sorry, when you ask,
And that's a great
control,
And
you're
that's
checking your breasts and know about it and be talking about it and talking about her story and talking to your families and talking to your grandmas and your aunties, and it has to be on the table. So
Yeah.
it's not a surprise when you get sick, that
Yeah.
that it could be in your risk. You could have a risk.
and I think that was a plus for me because I've always checked my breast. Even me being so young, I checked my breast, and like when I felt the lump, I'm like, something is not right, opposed to someone else might have been like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
And has any doctor ever told you what normal feels like? Do they ever say this is how the normal breast should feel?
They said lumpy, you feel a lot of, well,
And they go, you have dense breasts, see you later, right?
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was diagnosed, as I told you ladies, I was breastfeeding. And when you are breastfeeding, your breast tissue feels lumpy and bumpy. And when you're engorged and you have clogged milk ducts, it feels like rocks are in your breast. So it's sometimes, for me, like I said, in April of 2019, I went for my gynecological examination, annual, and she felt around my breast tissue, and I was asking her at that time, does this feel normal? Like, I don't even know what's normal or not, because everything felt so lumpy. And she said, yeah, this is completely normal, breast tissue, and you are breastfeeding. So like I said, when I felt my lump, I immediately thought, oh, this is just a clogged milk duct, but it didn't go away. And then it just started to feel painful. And at that point, my background, I'm a veterinarian. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pacify my health. I'm going to go get this checked out. So the problem I have, though, with my diagnosis of being given triple negative quickly is that I was told over the phone from my OB office that my results came back cancer and triple negative. I had no idea what triple negative was. I was hoping that that may be a positive thing. And the OB, I did. I was
too.
like,
I did
okay, I
too.
hear I have breast
I
cancer.
did too.
Is
So,
triple negative, is that good?
Right.
Right,
Um,
knocking all
right.
negatives
I
out. I
did
was like,
too.
yep, take the triple
Yeah,
negative.
and then when you Google it, you're like, take me Jesus, what happened
Right.
here, you know? So for me, my OB failed me, that office, because she did not educate me at that time exactly what this meant. It was, you need to go find a breast surgeon. And it's just like, where do I find that? Do I, Google it? Do I put it on, MapQuest? So it's just, like, so I was literally left with, this is what you have,
Wow.
triple negative breast cancer. Now you need to go find a breast surgeon. And thankfully, I do have a friend who is a doctor, and her sister is a breast surgeon.
Wow.
So she helped me find somebody and help guide me too. And so that's why I'm saying the Lord placed people in your life for a reason. But yeah, so I think it starts there. If if anybody's checking your breast or doing a physical examination on you, and they're touching your breast tissue, they need to be telling you why, what to feel for, what to look for, and what breast cancer is. I think it needs to start there.
And I think also it
I
speaks
think
to the
it
needs.
just, I'm sorry. I was just saying that I don't know that it can be any one place that it comes from. We've talked about branding, when we see the pamphlets, when we talk about hearing it from our doctors, I think it has to come from so many different places. It took a long time for everyone to get the idea of, you have to do your breast exams. I can remember being younger, seeing the little, thing that you hang in your shower, and that's a long time ago. But I just think that information has to come from so many places. I'm a college professor, and so triple negative breast cancer day, thank you for that day. I would have my husband, he knows, he takes that day off because he comes to my class and he comes with a model, a breast model, and he has every student touch it and say, this is sort of what you're looking for. It's a lump that doesn't move around. It's almost set under, and giving them an idea. Will that help them in the long run? I don't know, but it's more information that they're getting from another vehicle. So it's just got to come from so many places.
Wow.
We've got to talk about it more. We got to talk about menopause more. We have to talk about breast cancer more. We have to talk about all these women's issues that have been so taboo before and so hush hush.
Wow.
And I would say that for me, one of the things that, because I always try to look at things from a really broad spectrum in terms of, like, for example, I'm blessed to have like one of the top oncologists I personally feel like in the world, and especially in Miami. And I mean, her to get in with her was like no small feat, but I had a great team. I had the great tribe, as someone mentioned. And I think, it brings up the point, which is one of the reasons I created this mobile mammogram too. And the tour is for uninsured women. It's not for people who have insurance, because what happens is you have the health inequities. I'm blessed, and I know how to be a great advocate and make sure that, oh my gosh, I have this oncologist. But what about the woman who doesn't even have insurance, in a rural town? And then, in fairness to all of you amazing oncologists, you're so swamped. Like my oncologist, she's so thorough. I've been at Miami Cancer Institute where she's like literally still in clinic until like 8 or 9 o'clock because she's that committed. And when I am with her, because I see her like every 3 months, she has me on a super still aggressive follow-up program. The time that I have, the FaceTime that I have with her, she's super engaged, but she still has other patients that are waiting. So it's one of those things in which I agree with you, Cecily, that it has to be, it can't happen at one place. And that's why for me as a marketing person who's a CPG marketer, I just feel like from my time being a survivor in this community and the people that I'm really close with, I'm like, do you realize the people that you're talking to on social media, you may have all these followers, but you're really not even putting a dent in the number of women, especially in the African American community, where I know so many people. Some of my friends, their parents had breast cancer, their mothers had breast cancer, and it was a secret.
Yep.
I have people that are in my DM who I've like coached and given advice, but they're not sharing it publicly because there's just all these things. So it's like, I think, we have to, it has to be, as you've referenced, Dr. Mo, like a 360 program. When I build right marketing strategy, we're talking to each other. Like we're sitting here talking to each other. If we're not talking across genres, then, we're not really advocating because we have to meet people where they are and we have to speak their language. We can't, every night I see these commercials for all these pharma drugs that I can't even pronounce. And I'm like, who knows what that means? So I agree that it has to be it really has to be strategic. And I was really just surprised. Like, it's one thing to be a caregiver. I've been a caregiver twice, but to look at everything, to hover in my helicopter as a marketer, I personally just feel like the oncology industry is so behind. It's just like, what? Like, and that's why one of my pet peeves is a lot of pharma companies. It's like, they're writing checks, but it's like you're writing checks to people because they have these huge followings, but these are not the people who have relationships in these communities.
Or they're to check the boxes.
But it looks good. It checks that box because you're saying, oh, I'm speaking to this community of people. No. So
that time's up for that though. That's changing. Sharon, I see your hand is raised.
Gonna help change that. I'm gonna help be the person to be like, no, I hope if I save one life, I'm gonna be happy.
That's right.
Yeah, my hand is raised because this is just my personal opinion and anyone can chime in. I do not feel, I think it's very inappropriate to tell anyone they have breast cancer over the phone, period.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, agree.
I agree.
That's how I got my diagnosis over the phone.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. You're right, Sharon.
Both times.
Me too. I was on the phone. My doctor was like, do you have someone there with you? No. I'm like, no one's
so
here.
bad. That's so horrible.
That's not
Yeah.
something that you tell on the phone. And then the last thing is, I know Ricky, I don't know, Dr. Mo, you might know Dr. Mina Price, she used to be with Breast Care Washington, DC.
Mm-hmm.
She has these breasts. They are real. I mean, she trained, they're amazing. And you have to find 8 lumps and no one can find the 8 lumps. And she said, you guys never check right under the nipple. So we all plan trying to find, but it's so good to train that, I think it's really good to train that way. So that's how, if she's training, she's not in the breast space right now, but if she's training people, that's what she used. And be great if we get our hands on some, but it's really good. It's a good tool to use.
I want to caveat that real quick, Sharon, is that I have a friend who did not have a lump palpable in her breast.
Yeah.
It was a lymph node underneath her armpit
Yeah.
that was
I'm
only
working-
swollen. And
Yeah.
and she thought that she just had an infection because she's also in my profession, a veterinarian.
Mhm.
And so it's important that not only, like you're saying, check around your breast and the nipple,
Yeah.
but up in the clavicle area, the neck,
Right.
around in your armpits. Because sometimes you may not feel a lump in that breast, but you may feel a lymph node.
Right. Ricky referred someone down here to Richmond and that was the case as well. It was nothing in her breast. It was actually under the arm, just like a little swollen. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
I think that we'll do a separate show on breast exams. I have a model
Yeah.
with lumps in it. We can go over that in detail.
Yes.
One thing in closing, I do want to say, as we're getting ready to wrap this up, is that the need for navigators, for advocates, for people who look
Yeah.
like us to be by our side and be resources for us has never been more clear than it is right now, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
whether it's somebody to help you find a surgeon, whether it's somebody to connect you with a researcher or a trial, or just say, hey, you know what, girl, I know what you're going through. Let me connect you with 2 patients who just finished their chemo and they can tell you what they wish somebody had told them. But that bit of connectivity is missing from many cancer programs. And so I encourage all of you, and even the people watching, to think about how to take your story, how to take this test and turn it into a testimony and get trained to be a navigator, get those skills and train your family members and loved ones and friends and caregivers and people who say, oh, I wish I could do something. I want to volunteer. How can I help? Here's how you can help. It is a huge, huge benefit to each and every patient, I think, to have somebody to just say, you know what, I can connect you with somebody. I know somebody. Let me look in my directory. Yep, here it is. I got a hairdresser. Here it is. I got, a social worker for you. I got a therapist for you, a nutritionist. So, and cancer centers should have that. Community programs should have that, but they don't always look like us. They don't always offer the resources that you need or the perspective or the time. And so I think that, just if nobody else gets anything from this, and there's so much to take away from this, my God, but that we have to support each other. We have to take care of each other. We have to reach back and help each other out.
Yeah, this conversation is to be continued.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah,
Haley and I
yeah.
just have to go give another talk now. So we have to for over an hour and a half. So you guys, I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough, my breasties. You guys are
Mhm.
forces
This
of
is
nature.
incredible.
And
Thank
I
you.
love you so much. I so appreciate you. We got to do another TNBC show. We got to have another TNBC day, Haley. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But you guys are awesome, awesome, awesome. And we'll put everybody's contact info in the chat. You know where to find us, touchbbca.org. And we're here for you. And, we are special and beautiful and precious. And we're going to keep fighting this fight every day. And we love you so much.
Mhm. We hope this has been relatable, reliable, and real. It's what Ricky and I set out to do every Wednesday night. So the doctors and
The doctor is in.
rest of love.
Rusty love. Happy TNBC Day.
Happy TNBC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.